newspaper. Now, the first news, even if convict must follow procedure. Now, you might have heard about this thing in newspapers for the last 2 3 years, and this scourge actually started from the state of UP, where you have something called as bulldozer justice. That people who are accused of any particular crime, the governments used to raise up their homes, raise up the homes of their relatives, so as to have a huge economic impact on these. And at times, what we have also seen, and there have been allegations that a this has been targeted on a communal basis, and b this they do not follow rule of law, and due justice is not there. So these cases have often been raised to the Supreme Court. In fact, the starting of that was 2 years ago in in April of 2022, when Dushyant Dev, and you should probably be aware of certain lawyers when you start reading the newspapers. So Dushyant Dev is a senior advocate. So Dushyant Dev had raised this issue in the Supreme Court, and but nothing concrete has come out of it. In fact, this scourge has also, in fact, this kind of malaise has actually spread into other states. For example, the state of MP, the state of the state of Rajasthan. So you have this bulldozer justice coming up, and the Supreme Court had taken up this issue, and then they basically said that everything should be. We are not here to protect encroachments, but at the same point of time there should be due justice. And one of the possible solutions to this is that you can have you can have some kind of a digital track, whether notices were meted out, notices cannot be backdated, and then what was the reply. And the best way forward to do this is to do it through blockchain, because blockchain is something which is a secure technology. You cannot erase it, and once you receive the entire paper trail, and then if some action has to be taken, action has to be taken. So you cannot you cannot, the Supreme Court cannot also direct the municipal corporation not to take any particular action, but at the same point of time you have to have the ethics in mind, that whether due justice has taken place or not. So you'll probably see an editorial on this in the coming pages. But at the same point of time, as I told you, that this has been something which is also being popularly copied by other states. So this is one news. Then striking gold, you can probably read this. Then another issue where I mean your Madhvi Puri Boch has come to news is with respect to, again, the enrollment that she has been getting from ICICI. Now Congress has alleged that she's been getting a much higher, in fact 5 times the salary that she's currently getting with SEBI. She's received from ICICI, and this also kind of questions. So there's a broader question to this. There is something called as revolving door policy in US, and you should read about that policy, and then what happens if people from corporates join regulatory bodies, and what are the ethics regarding it, and what are the ethical conflicts regarding it. So maybe something like that is required on your part to read and then develop. So this is one thing. Then another news from the front page is hospitality, hospitals to hospitality, food and beverages to cement, mega industry players head to Bihar. Now what we have seen in the last 2 years, because the elections are around the corner, and Nitish Babu wants to stay in that seat for another term. So what we are seeing is that economically Bihar is basically getting a lot of traction, whether it's the budget, or its infrastructure projects, or its industrial projects. We have seen a scourge of these projects coming to Bihar, but at the same point of time, what they really actually need is a lot of agro processing units, because that is the Bihar's mainstay, and all of this is to basically improve the employment condition in Bihar. So you can read about this particular news and what is happening on the political side. Then right. See, this is what I was talking about. Bulldozer justice, how states copied UP template. Then then you can also see this India Singapore Pact on Semiconductor Health, likely MEA ahead of PM visit. You can probably see this, and we are also the PM is also planning to go to Brunei, and there also we are planning to have a defense joint working this thing group. But this is very important with respect to Singapore semiconductors, because you should be aware of the fact that we are right now in a semiconductor war throughout the world. So if you're not aware of what is a semiconductor war, you should read about it, especially with respect to the fact that recent visit of Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, to China. The military advisors of China had clearly told him that they will have some kind of authoritative foothold in Taiwan, and you should be aware about the fact that Taiwan holds the world's key towards semiconductors because of its powerhouse of semiconductor production. So this is something that the world also needs to take care of, the supply of semiconductors throughout the world. So you can read this. Now let's go to the editorial page. Now the first is Monsoon Comfort. Now if you see the article Monsoon Comfort, we've been talking about the fact that India has now received plentiful of monsoon. Yes, the spatial aspect of monsoon can be there. That some parts might receive more on rainfall, other parts might not receive so much of rainfall. But in general, if you see, the monsoons have been good. In fact, in June there was 9% surplus, and then in August and July there have been significant amount of surplus that has been there. Now, because you have plentiful of rainfall, then your croppings and your kharif crop, you're expecting that it will be plentiful. So especially that of your rice and sugar, you expecting a good amount of production, and therefore now you are letting loose of the restrictive policies that you had set in 2023. For example, put ban on sugar mills to produce ethanol directly from cane juice, because if you're producing directly ethanol from cane juice, you're basically diverting the sugar production to ethanol production, which is going to be used for the vehicles. So therefore you have that dilemma whether to produce it for industries or to produce it for this thing. And you can probably note this as a dilemma in itself, as well as an economic dilemma. And then you should also be aware about what are these B heavy, C heavy molasses. I discussed this view with you earlier as well. Then apart from that, you also have the case where you can mills and distilleries which are producing sugar can be allowed to use up the 2.3 million tons of rice for ethanol production. So you should also be aware that ethanol can be produced from food grains, ethanol can be produced from sugar molasses, so that also can be done. And then you should also the Ministry of Consumer Affairs and Food is also thinking of relaxing prohibition on basmati exports and parboil exports as well. Now all of this should be taken care of at the earliest. Now why it should be taken care of the earliest? Because you right now know that this is going to be plentiful of production. Now if you wait for all of this to all these stocks to first come the market, then what happens is that the existing price in the markets goes down, and it is the farmer who suffers the most. If you wait for this, it will be anti farmer and pro consumer, and in fact our entire policy apparatus of managing agriculture and inflation is towards a consumer bias rather than a producer bias. And therefore we need to take early action. We need to make sure that the excess production, that the excess reserves that we have are gone. We are either exporting it or using it for ethanol production, and then so that we do not fall into that cobweb model where what happens is that low I mean we have high production leads to low prices, low prices leads to the next season you will have low production and then you have high prices. So we typically we people from economics we have already covered this in the optional, that what a cobweb model is. Otherwise others can also think about it and just google it up what a cobweb model is. Then another thing which we had read from the first page of newspaper yesterday was to do justice. Now we have had a 2 day conference on basically district judiciary in Delhi, and where all legal luminaries had spoken, and one of the main strays of this particular meeting was that of the president's speech. And the president had talked about something called as black coat syndrome. Now think of the litigation burden that is there. In fact, there have been multiple cases of blackmail and sexual abuse of hundreds of girls in Ajmer, and the justice was meted out after 32 years. And simultaneously think about the plight of a woman who had to repeatedly come to courts, and you have something called as litigation fatigue, that you have to come to courts again and again, and because of that you have to miss all your miss your office, and therefore she is asked for withdrawal of the case. Now how long does a case take is a major issue, and then justice is extremely grinding in case of India. As I always make you a quip that in India, if you start a case, it will be your next generation or probably your next to next generation which will be fighting that particular case, or taking that case to the ultimate conclusion. So justice is delayed, and then justice delayed is justice denied. And a lot of this has to do with inadequate resources. There's something called culture of adjournments. You can easily get adjournments in courts. And then the other thing is that you have two the in terms of infrastructure, you have poor infrastructure, you have low number of judges, just 15 for 1 million people, instead of 50 as recommended by the law commission. And then you also have the other office staff of judge of the judicial system is also poorly is poor in terms of their organizational skill and in their number skills as well. And then we need to have digitalization as well. Now there was this 3 step process that was talked about yesterday. You can revise that 3 step process and how that might reduce the judicial clogs. Then if you want to read the big stepper, you can read it. Similarly, injustice and daddy issues, if you want to read, maybe something that you can read. Kind of dystopian, this is kind of is telling where does that if you're talking about anger as the biggest quality of a man, then comes from that anger is the righteous violence. And that is where there is a lot of, once you see these animals, once you see these movies like Animal, and you have these so to say misogynistic kind of movies, that also kind of sets the culture in the society as well. So it's kind of talking about what we see in the movies is what we also reflect back into the society as well, and it kind of portrays back into society as well. So you can probably read this article. Then the article that I was interested in was no clean state in Bangladesh. Now what has happened is that this article gives you the entire history of Bangladesh, that how US was not in favor of creation of Bangladesh, because it wanted basically an open door with China, and China and Pakistan were close then as well. And basically the president of US, Richard Nixon, at that point of time had sent the 7th fleet to Bay of Bengal. Now but at the same point of time, the western artists, non-government sectors, all of them had a different view on Bangladesh. They had huge concerts for Bangladesh. And but the issue is that the political masters of Bangladesh had looked towards Bangladesh as some kind of a problem, because they saw they saw Bengali language as much more closer to Hinduism. They saw their entire society much more closer to Hinduism than to their ideal kind of a Sunni version of Islam that they had seen in Pakistan. So there was this clash of civilizations that you were seeing, clash of ideas that you were seeing, and that is why the secessionist movement had taken place. And you already know that what happened in 1971, the liberation happened, and in 1975 the entire family got murdered. The two sisters were spared because they were not in Bangladesh. And then from 1990s you had this alternate governments that came into power, the AL, the Awami League, which was much more secular, and the BNP, which was much more communal in those terms. And then you have this history that is there till recent times. But at the same point of time, there's a very interesting paragraph here, that the contestation between religious and radical equal and racial equality and majoritism is a reminiscent of the struggles in several countries. So this struggle is actually there in a lot of countries, whether you should have religious or racial equality. And then there is majoritarianism. For example, in US you have white majoritarianism versus racial equality. In France you have ethnic Frenchness and equal citizenship. In India you have secular nationalism and Hindu nationalism. So this is seen everywhere. And to say that now Bangladesh will move away from secularism is basically, or secularism is dead, is not the right statement to make. We will be somewhere in between these two extents. But at the same point of time, Bangladesh has improved in terms of a number of its parameters. But at the same point of time, despite doing well in number of parameters, what needs to be seen is that economic growth without sufficient jobs and coupled with authoritarian repression of dissent, and is insufficient for political legitimacy. So you can note down this line and use it in your IR papers for any particular country, and you can then give the example of Bangladesh. So this is something that you can read. This good article. Then if you want to read the 10 half truths of caste census, you can read it, but this is too too casteist for me for civil services. Yes, at the same point of time, I love Yogendra Yadav's analysis. If you want to read it, you can read it, but my focus will be on two other articles. Beyond the headline number. Now, beyond the headline number is basically first talking about the first quarter growth. Now, we already know the first quarter growth of the Indian economy has been below par. The RBI's estimate was 7.2% for the entire year, but the Q1 data from April, May, June of FY25 came out to be 6.7%. Now, what again, as I told you guys, playing with statistics is fun. Now, most of you who are from econ optional, we've been discussing how to play with statistic. Now, what he said is that the private consumption, and see, whenever he wants to make a boast about the number, he will always quote current prices, whereas all of these are real prices. So these are real numbers, and these are all nominal numbers. So he said that the private consumption has increased by 12%, and then the investments have increased by 9%. Yes, the government expenditure, we know that why the growth is less. The growth is less because of two factors. Because of the government elections, the government expenditure and the capex did not take place, but that has been replaced by the private sector capex. And then the other thing that has happened is poor agricultural growth, which is only 2%, and for last 1 year it was 1.6%. So all of this was the reason why there was a decline in growth rate. And but at the same point of time, because the monsoons have become good, and you also expect La Nina in the coming times, So we expect that the growth will be much more faster, and we'll be able to cover for the poor growth in the or average growth in the first quarter, and then still reach the 7.2% target that we've had for the entire year. Then at the same point of time, this article also talks about number of issues that the government needs to take up for our growth. One of these issues is discussed in the explain page, which we'll go through in detail, and you need to make a cutting of that particular article and then keep it for your agriculture, for both your GS as well as for your economics optional. Now, what needs to be done? So the first thing that needs to be done is basically self-financing guarantee. Now we have talked about MSME and the role of MSME in the economy, and we need MSME to have much more important corpus, much more bigger corpus, and financing and funding is one of the major issues that MSME face. And because of this you need to have a credit guarantee fund for this, and you need to expand this credit guarantee fund to a 10,000 crore corpus. And a similar corpus is now also needed for agriculture, for digitalization. We are going to talk about that agriculture corpus. And then there's also talk about that you should have a in-house capability to assess MSME for credit eligibility. Now you what we are wanting is something like a UPI model. Remember, we are also launching the unified digital interface, where what we can do is we can collate all the data for SMEs. For example, what are the important data for SMEs is that you have their direct taxes, their GST, their all of their numbers, and once on the basis of that you can directly see that what is their credit rating, and then you can give them the funding. So you can do that. And then in agriculture, you're talking about digitalization of land records. We're going to read about this and how it is going to improve the credit accessibility in agricultural and agriculture related areas. And finally, it talks about the mapping, the GIS mapping of land records in urban areas, in maintaining property taxes, and even in land acquisitions. And what one of the most important things that goes underscored is that more than 50% of the municipal funding that municipalities get is from property taxes, and that is something that needs to be improved. And then it takes a dig at Punjab. Then the next article, it takes a forest. Now this article basically talks about the interconnectivity that a forest has, and what we need to have is biodiversity corridors within cities, so as to fight climate change. Now the article starts with the fact that suppose I throw you into a forest or into a desert. Your ability to survive, once you overcome your fear of a forest, your ability to survive in a forest is much more, because of the fact that the resources are plentiful. At the same point of time, there is an anecdote here which talks about the Yellowstone National Park in US in the 20th century. It was deplorable. Land was barren. It's because of the fact that the apex creature, which was the grey wolves, were missing, and they were being hunted. And because the apex creature was missing, what had happened was there was a lot of I mean, you had these what is this, deers. The deer population was overpopulated, and because the elk and deer was overpopulated, they had eaten all the grasslands, and because of that you had again a number of issues with respect to small pollinations. Now what they had done was that they had introduced these grey wolves, these grey they had introduced these grey wolves, and because they had cut down on all the excess deers, then the entire ecosystem started to work well. And it is said that there is a wood wide web. Basically all the plants, all the trees or have their own neural connections below the earth, below the soil, which is also can be called as natural intelligence. In fact, it is being said that once a tree is infected, then it basically communicates to everyone around itself about the imminent danger. Now think of it as even for humans, how a single cell creates energy, how we are, all of us have unique genetic codes. So there is a natural intelligence there, which we've just understood. But at the same point of time, nature has it for number of years, and nature has the ability to basically cope up with human activities, but we need to give it time. So we, instead of building this excessive buildings and over concretization, we need to incorporate all of this within our cities. One of the examples is Medellin in Colombia, which has created a network of green corridors. We can do that in Mumbai as well. So read about this good article with a number of good anecdotes. Then this is the main article that I want you to keep. The Union Cabinet has basically approved a 3,000 crore rupee digital agriculture mission for creation of digital public infrastructure for the farm sector. Now this is something that was also mentioned in the budget this year. Now how will it affect the farmers, how will it affect the farm sector, is that you need a UPI. You need, just like a UPI where you have Aadhaar, where you have DigiLocker, e-sign, UPI, all of this, and or digital components. The components of digital agriculture mission are AgriStack, Krishi Decision Support System, your KDSS, and soil profile map. So these are the three components. So we are going to talk about this agri stack. Now see, what is this agri stack? Now in agri stack, what you need is all the decision making on all the basically information that is there with respect to farmers. So farmers registry, the georeferencing of maps, and crop zone registry. So all of this will be maintained by the state, and all this basic infrastructure will be there, and agri stack will be developed. So farmers basically registry is like, just like an Aadhaar card to a farmer, typically linked to his or her land records, and the kind of livestock that he owns, and the crops that he has done. All of that will be there. And then once the government creates this identity for these 11 crore farmers in the coming years, then you can then give incentives to all these farmers directly into their account. You know who's basically growing what, and what kind of incentives needs to be given. Then you also within this, you also need a crop zone registry, where the crop zone data should be provided, that these are the crops that you are growing, and depending on how to change the cropping pattern will be very easy, because if you know someone is growing pulses, what needs to be done, and if there is an imminent thing that is coming, if it is the higher rainfall coming, or something else is coming, you can then immediately reach out to the farmer and then direct him to do something else. So this is another thing that we are going to do. Then you have georeferencing maps, where the maps will be linked to GIS. Now you can then create an entire cadastral map of the entire country. So this is the first leg. This is the first leg of the agri stack, which in itself has three parts: the farmers registry, the crop zone registry, and the georeferencing maps. The other is Krishi DSS, basically the decision making system, where you have the remote sensing information, soil, weather, water resources, all of this, which is going to help the farmer with a kind of a probabilistic system, that your crops, how much you will earn, what is your whether your crop will do well or not. And in fact, even if you have some kind of damage, then the damage assessment and the insurance will be taken care of by the KDSS. Then the final is soil profile maps, where you have the soil profiles of all the soils available, and based on that you can then you can then best suggest that which kind of crop you should be growing. So all of this data, so what you're doing is you're going to create an agriculture which is going to be very data oriented, which is very technological oriented, and then the numbers will also show that the yield will also increase based on that. Now very important thing that is happening in Sudan. There have been 500 days. There's a huge article in the Economist this year, the recent Economist that I had sent you on the group, on the humanitarian crisis in Sudan, and the two forces, the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, which are fighting for more than 500 days, and most of the population has been basically displaced, and the entire, both the economies have been ravaged, and millions of people have basically gone into other states as well. So read about this. This is a very important article, and the name of the story of name and the story of Cuttack's Ravenshaw College is now being changed. You can read this article as well. And then yesterday we had already discussed this, that in Brazil the X has closed down its office because of the kind of judicial pronouncements that are coming out of the Supreme Court of Brazil. So these are your editorials. Then if you want to read this flipping behavior, investors sell 54% of the shares allotted in IPOs in a week from listing. An important news, you can read this. And if you want to read another article, need to avoid market dominance of policy discourse, this is the other article that you can read. So with this, we wind up our class, folks, and with respect to the optional folks, we I will meet you at 3 o'clock today in the afternoon. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the evening. Bye bye.